Hello and welcome everyone to this live event at the European Parliament. These great new digs at the Vox Box, brand new, spanking new. It's really great to be just outside the plenary so we could grab the MEPs and bring them right out here and talk. And this one is an EPP live event about the EU-Africa Summit that is coming up this week and what should be done about it. The EPP Group has issued a position paper on that. We want to talk about that. All those issues called like development, climate change, investment, jobs, migration, security. The EU wants a global gateway leveraging 300 billion in development projects around the world, and much of that in Africa. We want to talk about that. My name is Chris Burns, and I've been on the ground in Africa in more than a half dozen different countries, covering conflicts, covering startups, covering hopeful signs that there can be actual development, real development between the EU and Africa, if we can make this work right. So my guests are Tomas Tobé, who is the Swedish MEP, chair of the Development Committee here in the European Parliament, also in the Libe Committee, Civil Liberties, and ITRE, Industry, Research and Energy. So all those aspects are very, very important for Africa. György Hölvényi of Hungary, also on the Development Committee, and the delegation to ACP, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly, and Michael Gahler over here from Germany, Foreign Affairs Committee, also delegation to the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly, delegation for relations with South Africa and relations with the Pan-African Parliament, so very much involved in this issue. And Hildegard Bentele of Germany. You are also on the Development Committee and ITRE, Industry, Research and Energy, the Environment Committee. Let me start with Tomas, because you being, of course, you know, the chairman of the DEVE Committee, and the EPP Group has recently issued this new position paper. Can you give us a couple of highlights of that position paper and how that can hopefully make a difference in this EU-Africa relationship, and also considering what we're having this summit this week. What should come out of that?
Well, thank you, Chris, for having me and my colleagues here today. I think what is important to understand that Africa is a different continent today than it was when the development policy was cemented. And what we are trying to push for now is really to go beyond this donor-recipient mentality and go to a true partnership with Africa. And from EPP, we have high expectations now. We really now need to deliver on this partnership.
Right.
And I think we need to understand that public funding for humanitarian aid and development cooperation will be important, but that will never be enough.
It's not enough.
What we need to do, we need to create millions and millions of jobs in Africa for the young population.
As the population expands.
The population expands, so what we need is to boost trade. We need more of private investments, because that is the only sustainable way to also make sure that we have a growth in Africa. And of course, that also gives opportunities to Europe. Let's be frank about that.
Yeah, exactly. You've said yourself that you want this to be a win-win partnership. How do you mean that? Give us one example of that.
Yeah, but of course, if we can create opportunities for European companies, but at the same time make sure that more people can have jobs and that we can have a growth in Africa, of course, that is a win-win partnership. But we need that on more areas as well. I mean, we need to make sure now that we also make sure that on other issues that are perhaps more tricky, on vaccine production, on health, on migration. There are many, many issues on the table. And I have high expectations on this summit, because we need to go on from these nice words to actually see some concrete delivery.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that we will see is an investment package between EU and Africa.
As part of that global gateway, or beyond that?
Beyond that,
okay.
But let's see.
Yeah, Hildegard, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about this, and you're talking about the vaccines and COVID and how we have approached COVID in an international way. You see that as a possible sort of an example of how we could cooperate between the EU and Africa, right?
Yes, I think the big good thing about the cooperation on the vaccines is the joint approach, because we are teamed up as Team Europe we joined our forces and we made a very good offer to the Africans. It's not sufficient, but we joined forces and we made a very credible offer in contrast to the other actors. So I think we should really copy and imitate and this kind of approach to other aspects also, let's say on climate change, on energy cooperation, also on job creation and so on. So this is a very good sign, what we have, and we should build on it.
György, let me ask you too, because development's important, investment's important, but also human rights, right? We've talked about that before.
Without human rights exists nothing. This is part of the security policy, and without security is nothing. Yeah, and I'm sure about that. This is really a chance to get a good start, a new start on it. And to security and human rights, it's absolutely clear. The education, and education, it's an absolute crucial part of the story in the next years. As you mentioned, the population is growing until 2030. To keep the education level from today, we need more than 2 million new teachers.
Right.
This is a huge challenge.
And that's where the EU can help to upskill.
And of course we have to help, but we have to cooperate, and we have to really see what is the need and where are able the African countries to cooperate.
Yeah.
We are not there for lecturing.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And what is the need? Michael, you being so very close to these different committees dealing with parliamentarians in Africa, I think you very much have your ear on the ground, so to speak, over there, right?
Yes, we have engaged over many years in this cooperation with our colleagues, be it in the framework of the Joint Parliamentary Assembly, ACP-EU, or with the Pan-African Parliament. These are the two setups where we have really fought to enable them, these colleagues, to assume more of their constitutional responsibility. I mean, let's face the fact that the working conditions for such colleagues are incredible sometimes. No regular sessions, no offices, no technology, no assistance. This is on the one hand technicalities. On the other hand, it's really essential whether you can assume your role as an institution in a democracy. And we have done a lot over many years sharing information. That is the first thing. The EU is cooperating with these countries, but it's government, so the intergovernmental thing. We are getting the papers, the draft country strategies and all that. We shared it. And I recall how upset some of the African ambassadors have been why we shared information that they did intergovernmentally with our colleagues. So it's about really enabling colleagues to deliver better for their own citizens as well. And insofar, we have advanced a bit, but more needs to be done, of course.
Yes, go ahead, György. Yeah, please.
The Michael said very right. Yeah, that's really right way. Yeah, that is really cooperation with own responsibility. The responsibility is absolutely key word. Yeah, and that's what we have to improve it. Both sides.
Tomas, a little bit further on the EPP Group position paper. What are a couple other points that are important to you that you hope will be examined during this summit?
Well, let me take the most sensitive one, I think, at the summit, and that will be on migration.
Okay.
Because, of course, it is clear that we have a lot of internal migration in Africa. We have a very unstable situation also in many of the countries.
In fact, you just had a press conference with African reporters who were asking you mainly about migration.
Yes, of course. Because, of course, we have a lot of, especially, I would say, young men that are leaving Africa, and they are not leaving Africa all the times because they are in a situation where they had the right to asylum in Europe, but they will anyhow cross a very dangerous trip across the Mediterranean Sea, will end up in Europe with the hope of getting a job. And this, for me, and this is what I tell also my African partners, I think what we need to understand that we need to tackle the root causes of migration.
Okay.
And that then you can come back to the question of job creation, about education, like György raised, for example. Of course, we need to tackle climate change because otherwise we will have also migration coming from that. So I think for us it is a question that, yes, on humanitarian aid, we will always provide that from the European Union. But on the development cooperation, yes, we will need to be more conditional, because of course we do understand that there must be a cooperation that means that you have a responsibility for your own citizens. So we will have returns, we will have readmission, but perhaps the most important point is that we together work on fighting the root causes of migration.
Yeah.
And this is something that we need to discuss. you
Yeah,
know.
I think one aspect of that too is there are different kinds of migration for different reasons, as you said, and one of them is that some people coming from Africa are highly skilled, and there's a brain drain out of Africa. How do we fight that, György? And you've talked
Right.
about how it's
This is,
important.
yeah.
Education, upskilling, that's an important part of it.
Absolutely. That's. We have to take the respect about the own people, the own educated people. Yeah, and we have to give the support to stay in Europe for a while, but not get away.
Yeah.
This is the big difference. And here is one aspect: we have to realize the real need of the labor market. Locally, yeah, and this is the key element, yeah. That's if no investment, if no employees there, if no people there, they are able to take the job. Mm-hmm. It's not impossible to make this win-win situation.
Yeah, Hildegard, being on the ITRE committee and research and development and energy, how do we fight that brain drain?
Yeah, I think we have to reward those governments who follow up on good governance and political stability and political participation, because without this framework, there will be no development. So I think we should really, we have very good examples with the Global Compact with Africa, with the G20. So we really should work with those countries who are willing to have a sustainable development, to give perspective to their own people. And we should cut down, and I'm there with Thomas, we should be conditional, cut down development aid where there is a constant breach of our cooperation and agreements. We have to be more selective, and we have to really point out and figure out what are the European values and what is our vision where we want to go. And I think this is very important for young Africans, because they like the European model. They like our societies. They like freedom. They like development and having a safe life. So if we can provide them at home and really reward those governments and punish those who don't do that, we should work in this regard.
Governance. So that's a key issue. But Michael, how do we improve that government? How do we encourage countries to improve their governance? From what you've heard in your relations with parliamentary delegates on the ground over there.
I mean, there are African initiatives like, for instance, Mo Ibrahim, this fund who rewards good governance visibly, and where we should also come in. I think when we coordinate well our activities, for instance, education was already named, and I think that should, in the area where we still are in this cooperative approach, we should definitely focus on education. But that must be then accompanied by an approach where the investment that follows up in respective areas, where we then find, so to say, after education comes the supply of the job. So if we have an added value, and the governments see that also when jobs are created, taxes come, so that they have their own income, not only depending on us. We need to see to it through good governance that the annual budget of a country to a larger extent is composed of tax income. And that's where we can provide, if we have, for instance, in West Africa, they have cotton, they have coffee, they have chocolate or cocoa.
Right.
Beet. Everything,
Not the chocolate.
not the chocolate, the cocoa.
Yeah.
And all added value is produced elsewhere.
Yeah, they
Cotton
need
in
to be
Asia,
able to-
They need to be able to combine
At home.
At home, school, vocational training, investment from us together with their own local people, and then add the value there. See to it that income is created, taxes are paid, and then it makes sense for policymakers to deliver and not to be corrupt and to put it only in their own pockets.
What about in developing that local production? Is there a way that we can develop the relationship between startups or SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, between Europe and Africa?
Yeah, I think one of the means is certainly the microcredit scheme, or beyond micro even, for small and medium-sized enterprises. I think that is also part of the policy of the Commission, that, for instance, with our banking, with our the European Investment Bank, that they could provide also risk capital in order that, on the one hand, our entrepreneurs dare to go there.
Yes.
And at the other side, find partners on the other side that get the chance to really to invest and also buffer some risk.
So, Toby, I think that's what you're talking about some kind of an investment package that would facilitate that, right?
Yeah.
In what sectors? I think agriculture is extremely important to be able to feed themselves, right? And to manufacture their own food so they don't just send the raw materials, as Michael said, back to Europe. I've seen that myself on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, of course, agriculture will be huge because we have the numbers of food insecurity and the hungries, and of course, the manufacturing is problematic. So that will be one sector. I would also say health. And I think not only because of this pandemic, it's quite clear that we need to have more investments also in health. But I mean, we should not, Africa is not that different from Europe either. I mean, you have the same kind of, they need new innovation when it comes to climate. We need more entrepreneurs. I mean, Africa is a young population with huge opportunities, and I think we sometimes forget that, you know. And that's really what we're saying when we need to stop thinking in this donor-recipient mentality.
Yeah.
Let me be a bit controversial and say like this. The long-term goal should be to stop aid and begin to trade.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that we should have this relationship with all the countries in our partner countries forever. Of course, there are some needs now, and we have a lot of countries that needs our help, and we need to take that responsibility. But the long-term end game must to build now a win-win partnership where actually Africa can stand on their own 2 feet.
How can we, following along that line, what about this new trade zone inside Africa? It's barely a year old. How can the EU help that to develop?
We need to make sure that we implement it, take the experience from the single market.
From what we're doing here.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Drop the barriers, cut down the
Exactly.
barriers.
And a very important thing is also for investments is infrastructure, market access, because it's very fragmented. You know,
how do you
small
get your
farmers,
food to market?
You know, don't have, and I think we absolutely need to improve this, and we need to become visible because our competitors are there, and they provide this kind of public services which the government should provide. But I think we should make this offer, and I think there's the Global Gateway strategy really a chance.
Yeah.
We have to now shape it and implement it, but I think we should really, insist that it lays the ground for the investments and for this regional economic integration, what we want to see.
There's
Only
go ahead.
sorry for that, but only what we have to realize, and really to recognize this is really the specification of the rural economy. This is very, very important. Of course, we have the opportunities, we have the overview, we have the logistic, but we have to take it. And this is a crucial question, and that can be really away from this donor mentality.
Yeah. By the way, for those listening, if you hear a good soundbite out of this, please cast it wider with @EPP Group. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And I have barely 5 minutes left, unless, of course, Selina, you give me a little more time to go into overtime. But let's see how this goes. Hildegard, there's like a whole list of things. I mean, this is a huge issue. It's massive to get your head around in 30 minutes, right? But let's try what we can do. Critical raw materials. You had an own initiative on critical raw materials. That really shows there's something in it for Europeans and Africans to make this cooperation work.
We have to make Africa part of value chains because it's, as you said, it's until now very often just the exploitation of raw materials.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of, and we do have a look in our supply chains. I mean, Europe is doing this currently, and we want to raise our standards. I mean, this is also paid now because our consumers look into the raw materials. Where do they come from? How are they produced? Under which conditions? So there is also chances for Africa, to really deliver better salaries and really to step up in this manufacturing. That's a momentum now we have, and we should build on it, and we should do it together with the Africans because we don't want to lecture them. We want to really bring it forward.
Michael, how do we make that work in terms of critical raw materials?
Well, I think if we can really get the agreements with the governments concerned, and the approach is definitely that they feel they get an adequate share of the added value that is also created elsewhere. I mean, it is really a challenge. But if they have the feeling that, 95% of everything that is added takes place elsewhere, there is also then an inclination, because I think to offer it to other stakeholders, be it the Chinese or the Russians or whoever.
We're competing with others.
And we are competing with them. And I think we have, when it comes to the big issues of the past, I think we have learned our lessons of history, and we are really willing to deliver better and to cooperate better. I think at the end, they must make their experience with others, but I think they will, if they are honest, they will come back and prefer the interaction with us, because I think definitely we are different. It's not the colonial time anymore. It's for the future. It's for the common, for a common future of these two neighboring continents. We're also the closest ones in comparison to China or others. And insofar, I hope that the chances that are on the table will really be taken up, not only offered from us, but also taken up from the African side.
I want to go deeper in that if I can, but we have barely 5 minutes left. I just want to mention one thing about how I covered a business that was assembling cell phones in Angola, and which was great. But all the materials, everything came from outside of Africa. All they were doing was just assembling it. We have to help them develop their industrial potential in making their own things, right? It's very key.
And there the technology cooperation comes in. I think there's huge space still for technology cooperation, because things are really moving very fast. As I said, for example, in energy production, we're talking about hydrogen, electrolyzers, solar panels, and so on, which hasn't been in the past. So, but this is so fast, and we should really make Africa part of this development.
And for
we are all the time we are looking for good examples. And this is, for example, in Rwanda.
Okay.
If you see that it's just decided and started to build a factory for vaccination. They have their own vaccines. And it's absolutely necessary. Everybody can feel it.
South Africa's doing that too. They're building.
Exactly.
That's great. And one other aspect is about security.
Security.
I know you want to talk about that.
Security. It's of course it's much complex than the human life. And much complex than the military aspects. And I think it's, if we are talking about the security, I would like to go back what it mentioned by Thomas. It's the root of causes, and that's we can help. We don't have army, we have some bilateral
we have some boots on the
issues,
ground too.
But we have really investment, and we have knowledge about experience. This can be our weapons. Of course, we can develop something else, but it's not our profile.
Michael,
I mean, we need to take up the African agenda. They have an African peace and security architecture. This is a good label. We have the African Union providing some security, for instance, in Somalia or elsewhere. We have ECOWAS that engages in this area.
Right.
I think we need to definitely help themselves in the real sense, be it logistically, also with expertise. We have established structures. But the specificities in the African circumstances, they require their own setup. And in this regard, we have seen that they are able to react. In small cases like in the Gambia, when there was a president who didn't want to leave, so they showed some shot on the door, and we have seen, and it worked. And in this regard, I think it's better also to be acceptable on the ground. We see in Mali that our different activities, be it EU or MINUSMA or France as a member state alone, that we are sometimes perceived as intruders and not the ones that they actually need. So if that can be done by local forces, by the region, by their neighbors, it's definitely preferable.
Indeed. I think final word for you, Toby.
I think this is a really important point from EPP that we are putting on the table, because Hildegard mentioned earlier that we need a good framework, strong institutions and so on. But when we come to the question of security, I mean, how can you have any development at all if you don't have the basis of security?
Yeah.
And this is not often raised, I would say, when we talk about development policy. But this is also something that we are now trying to bring to the discussion. Because even if we're not engaged yet, I would say, on so many of the missions, not the military or the civilians, but I think it will enhance in the future. I think this is a responsibility that's going to grow in Europe. But that is perhaps for another Facebook Live.
For another, let's do another one. Let's do another one on that. Tomas, Hildegard, Michael, György, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for watching this live event at the European Parliament. Keep in mind the at EPP Group handle for any sound bites and comments you'd like to send out wider. Keep track of eppgroup.eu for any further information. My name is Chris Burns. Thanks for watching.